All right, Sebastian. So one of the things that, of course, we talked about when you and I were together with all the different facets of real estate, and one of those facets being real estate investing. So I've done some myself. You work with a lot of investors,
Yes.
and what's really interesting is how do investors find, especially people that are new to real estate investing, how do they get started? Like, how do they find locations that work? And then how do they kind of make decisions between whether or not they want to do long-term rentals, short-term rentals? Where can you even do those types of things? Um, walk me through somebody that comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm interested in doing some real estate investing. What do I do?"
Yeah. So the first thing we have to find out, what are they comfortable with? Are you okay dealing with a tenant on a long-term basis, or do you want something closer to a short term? And that kind of lets me know, hey, we're probably, if you don't feel like dealing with getting phone calls for the next year or longer, that lets me know it's probably a short-term or mid-term rental. And that also varies on location too. So, for instance, if you're looking for a long-term rental, um, you're probably going to want to be in a place where you're probably going to get some equity out of it right when you buy it. And for the short-term rental, there's three locations that I always say you want to be near. You want to be near a hospital, near a college, or near an airport.
Hmm.
If you're near one of those three or both of them, that would be really great.
Yeah, definitely. And on the short term, they're not so concerned about the upside. It's usually cash flow.
Cash flow,
Cash
exactly.
flow is king on that. So
Yeah.
if they can get into a place where they, like you mentioned, have kind of a built-in market of people looking for that, then there's a cash flow component, and then of course there's the tax benefits of taking a look at rental properties. I mean, when people are looking to get into it, they've already started to figure out, okay, what is this whole depreciation thing? So we got appreciation, depreciation, cash flow components. And then if they're in the short-term rental market, there are potentially, depending on how they're set up on their other tax areas, if they could qualify as a qualified real estate professional, or if their spouse can, there's potentially different ways that they can accelerate the depreciation, which is, of course, an additional tax advantage. This is not tax advice. I see clients doing it and navigating that space for sure.
Yeah.
Let's talk briefly just about how you see other investors kind of investing in real estate in Philadelphia into bigger buildings. Like, I always see big buildings change hands and think, wow, who's buying these buildings? Because it's so much money. And then you start to learn about the space, and it's pretty interesting. So let's talk about that for a second.
So one of the things is a lot of people think that, people are buying a bunch of doors. We call it doors
Mhm.
because it might be a multifamily property, single family. So you might buy a bunch of doors and then they're going to take those investments and buy a bigger property. But what's happening in a lot of cases is people are teaming up. So they'll team up with a mortgage broker, a private banking investor, and then they'll buy these properties together. Very rarely you'll see just one person buying these large 20 unit, 40 unit properties.
Yeah, I noticed that a lot in my background working in the family office space. I would see these partnerships on people's balance sheets, and I knew what their primary businesses were. I knew what they were into on a day-to-day basis, and I started asking some questions about that and realized, oh, they're partners in all of these really big projects. So when you see 10, 20, 30, 50, $100 million going into a project, and there's an entity behind that, oftentimes there's a bunch of investors behind that entity that are all participating in that deal together.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Well, thanks for kind of covering that space, the Philly market, where short-term rentals, people that can get into it, where they might look. I mean, ultimately, the purpose of this is not to answer the questions. It's to sit there and point to you and say, "Hey, come and ask me the questions," because you have those conversations all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be more than happy to talk to anyone that wants to get into it. that wants to grow their portfolio. But yeah, I would love to be the resource for that.
Thanks, Sebastian.
You're welcome.